All right. Well, I'm excited to be here. And so today we're going to talk about developing efficient cocktail programs. At Tails this year, I was involved in 2 seminars. We did one on speed and efficiency and one on training craft bartenders. And so what I tried to do today was kind of merge those together, which is a lot of content, right? So interrupt, let's talk. If you have any questions at all, we can get into that. A little bit of background about where I come from in terms of bartending and what my professional background is. I started working in nightclubs when I was 23 years old, which I think is probably the most valuable experience that I've had in preparation for making craft cocktails. I worked in a 2-man bar when I was in grad school. We rang $20,000 with 2 bartenders every single Friday and Saturday night without exception. It was the craziest high-volume bar that I've ever worked in. And one of my favorite bartenders that works for us right now, when we hired her, she's like, no, I can handle the pressure. I used to work the saute station at Olive Garden, right? And so I think that like those perspectives of just bring it on and just crush me with drink orders, or in her case, with horrible Italian dishes, whatever it is, every single night, over and over and over again, right, really prepared me to be able to do a little bit more craft-focused bartending, right, which I actually don't think is challenging at all. Right, I think that we like to make fancy cocktails seem like they're really, really hard because it makes us feel better about what we're doing and it raises the value of that cocktail. But really, we could train anybody to make a sidecar, right? It's not difficult to make that cocktail. You put 3 or 4 things, depending upon your spec, in a shaker, shake it, strain it, and serve it to a guest, right? It's just not hard. It's not at all, right? The hard thing is to do that 100 times in a night with a smile on your face while foreseeing everything that you need to do with all the guests in front of you, right? And that's the hard part, and that's what we should really be talking about at this point, at which we've kind of all, for the most part, formulated our opinions on what we don't like and do like in the cocktail world, right? Everybody can come up with their own specs, right? Everybody, has a palate and can taste and can form their own opinions, right? I think that the harder things are figuring out how to do that efficiently. So today, we're going to talk about 3 primary efficiency areas. We're going to talk about menu and drink development, bar design, and staff training, okay? So to get started, menu and drink development. Do your drinks and cocktail menu match the volume of the bar and the expectations of your guests, right? I think this is really, really an important step that might seem really obvious, but a lot of people skip when developing a bar program. I think that what typically happens is people are like, I want to open this type of bar, like let's say a tiki bar, right? I want to open a tiki bar, okay? So I'm going to serve a lot of really cool tiki drinks, right? I'm going to expect that my staff would know everything that Jeff Berry's ever written in any of his wonderful tiki books, right? We're going to be able to make every single one of those drinks, right? It's going to be the best tiki bar in the country, right? That type of enthusiasm starts, right? And then in searching for a location for this amazing, incredible tiki bar that is yet to exist, right? People will walk around and look at spaces that are 2,000 square feet, 6,000 square feet, right? They'll talk about bar layouts that have 2 wells or 4 wells, right? And there are all these factors, like what's the demographic of the guest that's walking through the door? Are you in, especially in this town, are you in an area where you're going to get slammed by just volumes of visitors, right? And then be dead the next week, right? So I think it depends on whatever venue you end up finding yourself in, right? But for some reason, people don't adjust what that early concept for the bar is to the space that they actually end up in, right? And I think it's a really critical error that a lot of places make, right? The menu and the types of drinks that you choose to serve have to match the venue that you're serving drinks in. It's really important. You have to keep that concept at its core, close to your heart, but it has to evolve and it has to be flexible for the place that you actually find yourself in. So what I'd like to do is kind of look at what I think are 6 examples of really efficient menus. I'll talk about my places, Anvil and the Pastry War, a little bit because that's just coming from my perspective. But I also want to look at these other 4 menus, Manifesto in Kansas City, Boilermaker, which just opened in New York City, Death and Company in New York, and 3 Dots and a Dash in Chicago. Okay, so this is the menu for Manifesto in Kansas City, which I think is one of the best cocktail menus in the country. I think that when we talk about really good cocktail menus, people always talk about cocktail menus from bars that have 20 seats in them, right? That have 50 pages of drinks in them, right? Which is great. Congratulations. That's awesome, right? But for those of us who don't have the ability to charge $15 a drink, right, and who need to serve lots and lots of people and make lots of people happy, I think that it's an entirely different way that we have to structure our menu. And I really like Manifesto's menu. The reason I like it a lot and the reason why I think it's an efficient menu is because it basically tells you everything that you want to know about these drinks, right, as a guest directly from the menu. So if we'll zoom in a little bit closer, right? So under the Bronx is burning, you get the ingredients that are in there. There's a price, right? It shows you what type of glass it comes in. So in this case, in a coupe, right? And it shows you that it's stirred. That's ST means stirred and SH means shaken, right? So as a guest, I'm like, okay, cool. This cocktail has these ingredients in it. I either like it or don't, right? It costs $12. It comes in a coupe, right? And it's stirred as opposed to shaken. Do you guys have people who come into your bars? Because I have this all the time, right? That are guys and they're like, could I have it in like a real glass though, right? Not a sissy glass, right? And I hate that conversation, but then I happily give it to them in a real glass, right? But this is a non-issue, right? All of these different ingredients that are involved here and how the glass is, or how the cocktail is presented is like right there in front of everybody, which really helps me. At my bar, Anvil in Houston, which I still think is probably the busiest cocktail bar I've been to in the country, we have 5 bartenders on Friday and Saturday night. That's it. We don't have any servers. 5 bartenders, 2 bar backs, and 200 people in the bar, right? And that's how things work. Everything comes across the bar. And when we pass someone a menu, we need them to get as much information out of that menu as possible because we have less time to talk to people, right? But we still need to make sure that they get the cocktail that's right for them. And I think this menu does a really good job of doing that. Boilermaker also does it the same way. It shows you the type of cocktail glass that this comes in. It says shaken here. It says stirred later, right? But they take it a little bit further, and there is a little small description of how the cocktail tastes. So Kentucky Buck, hints of oak and spice paired with snappy ginger and ripe berries, right? I think that's really helpful in helping people find that cocktail that's going to work for them as quickly as possible. I'm surprised, though, that more bars that don't do table service don't do things like this, right? If you have less bars and everything doesn't come across the bar like it does at Anvil, I'm surprised that that's not the case because I really think that when people are perusing a menu, it helps them to kind of figure out what's going to work for them the best. And so I really like this trick of providing as much detail about the cocktail on the menu as possible, right? It depends on what your bar structure is like. Maybe you've got time for more rhetoric across the bar. Maybe that's part of your service. But in terms of like tricks of the trade that you can kind of keep in your pocket if you want to be more efficient, I think that's a really great one. Death and Company, kind of a different approach, right? We've got quiet, got to talk to a door guy, reservations. They're going to sit you where they have room and organize everything for you. But even their menu here, I think, is really well done, and it has been for a while. It's categorized into spirits, right? Again, like everything is kind of divided into shaken or stirred. Everything's $14. So even in this scenario, we see like the same types of tricks employed. Then we've got 3 Dots and a Dash in Chicago, right? Which is an awesome, awesome tiki bar. That does a crazy amount of volume. Has anybody been there? Yeah? It's awesome. Like, it's part of this new wave of cocktail bars where people are spending a ton of money on build-outs and design and really recognizing that cocktails have value instead of like, a bar where people had to build it themselves for $250,000. That's what we did with Anvil when we opened it, right? I don't know what the specific price tag on this bar is, but it's huge. And there's 3 wells in the bar in the public area. Then there's a service bar in the back with 2 additional wells where all the servers get drinks. But their menu, again, is really, really efficient because there's 250, 300 people in this bar when I was there on a Monday once. And these are tiki drinks. Again, it shows you everything, exactly what the cocktail is going to look like when it comes out, price, ingredients. I mean, just everything is listed here. And I also think like the visual nature of how the menu's done is it's just like, it helps people, like no girl is going to accidentally order the ports a call, right, and be like, I didn't realize this was this boozy, right? It's going to avoid that problem entirely. It was like, I was looking for something with champagne, right? That's not going to happen with the ports a call. It's just not going to happen, right? So I think it's a really great menu. It's also fun. It captures the identity of the bar space really, really well. This is our menu currently at Anvil, which we will be redoing when we rebuild our bar in January. It's simple. We've got just like eight or so cocktails that we rotate on the house menu. Again, just like really, really straightforward, like what the glassware looks like, easy to find. The thing about our bar, though, is that we pass out a menu with 108 drinks on it. So on the back side of the menu is what we call the 100 list. They're the 100 classic cocktails that we feel like you should have at least once in your life. And so they're broken down into sour and short, herbal and spirituous, boozy and alluring, odds and ends, tropical and tiki, bitter and bold, and light and long. It's a little dense, right? But if we don't put it on one page of paper, our menu costs go through the roof, right? Because everyone steals our menus, right? So this, which is an important thing to talk about. That's really expensive. I'd rather pay my staff than replace menus every single week. So for us, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper is really important. We put 100 drinks on the back. We try to organize them in a manner where guests can find what they're looking for. And that's how we do it with 108 cocktails. And then we've got, this is the pastry war, which is our mezcaleria. We serve a ton of margaritas. They're front and center, right on the menu. We've got modern cocktails and what we call folklorico cocktails. And then on the back, we've got a short list of our mezcal and tequila. And even this here is designed in a manner that's somewhat alienating, right? So it's kind of like, if you want to talk about mezcal and tequila, let's have that conversation. So we're trying to design the menu so that we can have that discussion with people because we're dorks and that's what we want to talk about. But on the front page of the menu, we make it really, really easy for people who want margaritas, right? So that they can quickly find what they're looking for and we can give them a really great margarita and we can spend more time with guests talking about mezcal and tequila. So even like the duality of how that menu works helps us to be more efficient because we quickly find out. It's easy for us as bartenders too. When we walk up to someone and the page is turned over, we immediately know, we need to talk to them about mezcal and tequila, and it helps us kind of figure out, what type of conversation we're going to have with the guest in those situations. So even that, and again, it's on a basic letter piece of paper. Even that kind of helps us decide like how to open up and what we're saying with our guests. And again, it's just related to how that menu design works. Questions about this? No? Yes?
I never understood what the pastry war referenced.
The pastry war references a bar that was fought in 1838 between Mexico and France that started over a pastry shop. There was a French pastry chef in Mexico City. Mexican officials destroyed his pastry shop. France demanded compensation on his behalf. Mexico said, go fuck yourself, right? And they went to war over it. So that's what happened. So, and we don't have pastries.
And how many times a day do you get asked that?
All the time. But you know what? No one ever forgets the name of the bar. Ever, ever, ever. All right. So what I would like to do today is for us to come up with a hypothetical drink menu, okay? Let's pretend that we're all going to open a bar together, right, where we're going to have 6 cocktails on the menu. This would be great because there would be a lot of people to pick up shifts, right? So we've got 6 drinks on the menu. So I kind of wrote like a hypothetical how I would put together a 6-drink menu structure, okay? So we've got drink 1. If I was doing this, it would have a light spirit, it would have juice, it would be shaken, it would be a low cost percentage, low preparation, low price, and it would be popular with a fun name, right? So who's got a cocktail like that? Yes, somebody shout it out.
Berry basil smash.
Berry basil smash. Awesome. What's in it?
Vodka.
Yes.
Fresh blackberries.
Got it.
Sugar. Fresh basil. Baking syrup.
Awesome. Easy to make? Okay. Berry smash. Everyone is going to order that drink because they're like, I like berries, right? It's the first drink on the menu, okay? It's got something in it that, the first drink on the menu does not have mezcal, right? It does not. As much as I would like it to, it does not have mezcal. It has gin or light rum or vodka. That's what the first drink on a menu has because it is the most popular drink that is going to be ordered in your bar, right, with a 6-drink menu, okay? Second drink, lovable dark spirit, stirred, low cost percentage, low preparation, medium price, connects with bar identity. Okay, who's got something like that? What you got?
Barrel-aged Boulevardier Negroni mix.
Gotcha.
And it's
Gotcha. Okay, cool. It's got bourbon, right? Bourbon is my preferred spirit for this 6-drink menu. I'm glad you said that, right? People love bourbon, right? It's just, as Americans, we love bourbon, right? It's going to be a little more lovable than rye, for example. And I know everybody loves rye, right? But bourbon's a little more lovable than rye, a little more lovable than Smith & Cross, right? So it's just like easy, straightforward, right? Needs to connect with the brand identity, right? So if your cocktail bar is a tiki bar, right? Which I don't know if you start with a stir drink in a tiki bar, but whatever. If that's your kind of your concept, it needs to somehow connect and remind people this is the type of bar that I'm at, right? There should be some personality. It should come from some perspective that connects with your bar program and your bar identity, right? Everybody following me? Okay, again, we've got a low cost percentage because it's the second drink on the menu, right? Again, low preparation because these 2 drinks are probably going to be ordered the most. We know that. We pick the spirits for them in that regards. We put them at the top, right? So we need to be able to make them quickly, right? They need to be popular, connect with the bar identity. They need to have a low cost percentage, okay? Because we need to win on these drinks. That makes them difficult because if we're trying to create something with a low cost percentage, know it's going to be our #1 selling cocktail, and also let it have a low price. I like to start with the low price personally because I like to in my market, Houston, where our average cocktail price at Amble is $9.25, I like to put out there that you can have an affordable experience, right? It's important to serving cocktails in Houston is that you can have an affordable experience. So the first cocktails on our menu are $8 or $9, right? And it's an important part of how our bar works. Drink 3, interesting but comprehensible ingredients, medium to high cost percentage, medium preparation, and high price, okay? So now we're also going to let people know, but we have things that are a little more sophisticated. If you'd like, you can opt into that $12 cocktail on our menu. We have nothing that's more expensive than $12, okay? Interesting but comprehensible ingredients. We're not going to alienate people too much, right? But we might try something that's kind of asking them to explore a little bit more because that's a big part of a cocktail bar, is giving people an experience that they may have not had before. So who's got a drink like this? Share what you got. Gotcha. We're not going to do that on this menu because we already used vodka once, right? We're gonna play this game a little bit. Gin, right? We're not going to use. We've got 6 cocktails. Every single cocktail is going to have a different base spirit in the sake of having variety on our menu. So what's a gin cocktail? That's interesting.
Gin and Lillet with a little bit of pineapple and bitters.
Gotcha. We could do that. I might say that would go into maybe 4. I know we're not there yet, but maybe we would do that in 4. Right? Who's got something like, this is, in my mind, this is where like a cream drink goes, right? Or something with egg, right? A gin fizz with aquavit, or like, like something like that. Yeah.
I got an absinthe base spirit with chocolate. It's almost like a soda fountain.
Okay. Normally I would say absinthe would be too weird for the 3rd drink on the menu, but the chocolate is maybe going to help people feel a little bit better about it, right? Redemption cocktail. We could put that in there, right? It's going to have a higher price percentage because of the absinthe, right? People know what it is. It's interesting but comprehensible. If we're talking about a bar that's like really connecting with New Orleans identity, that might work really well here, right? Medium preparation, we can spend a little more time on it because we know that this drink is probably going to get ordered maybe once for every 5 drinks that we sell in the drink 1 section, right? So we can afford to spend a little more time on this. Yes?
I have a fennel vision. It's a gin and fennel syrup, Carpano, Bianco, and lime.
Cool. Absolutely. That would definitely fit here, right? Okay, cool. Drink 4, right? Let's do the absinthe one. We've got our weird comprehensible ingredients just in the sake of doing this because we put her pineapple gin cocktail here in drink 4, right? Again, light spirit, juice shaken, low medium cost percentage, high price, medium preparation, great presentation, okay? So this is for like after that person's had that first drink, right? And they're like, okay, cool, I'd like another cocktail, but I'd like something different, right? I don't like bourbon. I have no idea what absinthe is. Ooh, this is delicious, okay? I like pineapple and I like gin. It's like we're rotating like how people are going through this menu, right? And in this situation, we need to give them something different, right? We're going to ask them to spend a little bit more money, here with a higher price. It's going to have a low to medium cost percentage so that we can still continue to profit off the fact that we know that this is going to be a popular cocktail because it's approachable, right? Medium presentation, maybe we can spend a little more time on it because it's going to cost them more, so that's only fair, right? And a great presentation, right? I also like the idea that this cocktail, when it's going out, after they ordered the simple berry cocktail, right, they're going to be going, what's that, right? Oh, it's this drink right here on the menu, right? And so that you can reinforce that by talking to them about that, okay? Drink 5. This is where you can put mezcal, which makes me happy. Assertive spirit, stirred, high cost percentage, medium preparation, high price, the cocktail lover's drink, okay? It's important that we have these on our menus in bar programs, right? Because when people who really love cocktails come in, right, and we want to serve them something that's going to make them happy, something that's more original, more interesting, that maybe is keeping with modern bar trends, that we have something that we can put there for them, right? We also probably need to make that drink somewhat affordable, right? Because these are people that we really want to connect with. So we're going to take it on the chin here with a high cost percentage, medium preparation, a high price so that we can actually afford to use nice ingredients in the cocktail, right? Assertive, stirred, that's our cocktail here. So for me, this is our drink at Amble, our house cocktail called the Brave. It's a room temperature cocktail with mezcal, tequila, Averna Amaro, orange curacao, and Angostura bitters served in a wine glass, right? So we could put that right here, okay? No one is going to order that cocktail, right? And if they just had drink 4, it's not going to happen. They're not going to be like, do I want the gin and pineapple thing or do I want the room temperature mezcal cocktail, right? It's just not, and if they are, that's great. They can have all 6, and that's awesome, right? But that's just not going to happen. Again, like we know exactly that the drinks that we're putting on the menu are going to end up in the right hands, which is an important part of bartending. And drink number 6, we've got a flexible point of pride for the bar, high cost percentage, difficult presentation, or that's supposed to be difficult preparation, complicated name with a story, right? Who's got a drink like this? Yeah, what you got? What's in it?
2 ounces of Peychaud's bitters, cucumber, orange peel, grapefruit peel, strawberry, sit for 3 minutes, shake with
2 ounces of Peychaud's bitters. We are in New Orleans, yes. Exactly, though, right? We don't want that drink to end up in the wrong hands, right? So I do this all the time with our menu, all the time. If that drink needs to get ordered by the right person, right, I give it a complicated name. I give it a foreign name that is difficult for someone to pronounce. I do this all the time, right? We have this drink on our menu right now at Amble where the cost percentage on it is like 26%, right? So we called it the El Barinche, right? Which, like, for people who don't speak Spanish, they're like, I'll just get the Pliny's tonic, right? And they're cool with that because they can pronounce that. You'd be surprised how much a little trick like that can help steer people in the right direction, right? Because if we've got a cocktail with egg white on the menu that's one of our 6 cocktails and we're responsible for serving 200 people in a night, right? We don't want to serve 200 of those drinks. That's how bars die, right? We just don't want to do it. So even like the type of name that you use really will dramatically impact what cocktails are sold and which ones aren't. All right, so think about like all the things that we talked about. Placement on a menu, right? How we've rotated the cocktails here. How we made sure that every single cocktail had a different base spirit, right? We've got a good mixture of stirred and shaken, right? We know that the demographics that are coming into the bar are going to find the drinks that they want, right? It all goes there together. And sometimes you end up with drinks that don't nicely and neatly fit into these categories that are really solid cocktails that we want to serve people, right? Especially if you've got a limited menu. Well, sometimes you run the risk there of like putting something out there that may not be the right drink for that person. If you've got a really, really boozy gin cocktail with creme de violet in it, right? You know, they might, the drink 1 and drink 4 person might confuse that as something that they're going to enjoy because they're like, I like flowers. Yes, this is, and then they're like, what is this? Just, you know, and it's just like, sometimes you have to let those drinks go, right? Or you've got to figure out a tool to make them work, right? And the tools that you have in those situations are, I'm going to put this at the bottom of the menu, right? If I put it number 1, I'm just going to get screwed, right? It's going to happen, right? Why make it hard on yourself? I'm going to put it at the bottom of the menu. I'm going to give it a drink name that's maybe difficult to say, right? Not because I'm trying to be a dick about it or I'm not being hospitable, but that actually is hospitality because I'm making sure that the person finds the right drink for them. I always say that we're just working at Baskin-Robbins and we're trying to help people find which of the 31 ice cream flavors is right for them. Like that's our job as bartenders more than anything else. And when we design a menu, it's important that we keep that in mind and kind of keep all those tricks that we have at our disposal in the design process, like right there, so that we make sure that when we put that in front of someone, we're making the experience that they're about to have easy to enjoy. Does that make sense? Any questions about this menu design? No? Okay. What happens when you get to like 18 drinks or 24 drinks, right? You do the same thing, right? Like look at Clover Cove's menu, right? When you look at their menu, I don't have it here, but when you look at it, right, it's several pages, but each page is broken into a category, and then the category kind of follows a similar pattern, right? They've got categories with 3 to 6 drinks in it, right? The first one is almost always the drink that is the safest, right? The second one is usually really creative and has a higher price on it. The third one is usually something stirred, right? And it's just like you can look at the menus of well-designed menus around the country, and you can see the pattern for how they've done this, right? And it's done with hospitality in mind at all times, right? And also with profitability in mind, right? If we're going to have someone that wants to spend $9 on a cocktail, right, we've got to consider the cost percentage in a different regards. If we know that 15% of the cocktails that we sell tonight are going to be that drink, right? We've got to make sure that that drink makes sense for the bar, right? And that we're making enough money on it to be able to sell it at $9, right? For us, at Anvil, those are Pim's Cups and Pliny's Tonics, right? 108 drinks on the menu, 20% of the cocktails that are going to go out on a Friday and Saturday night are going to be one of those 2 cocktails, right? So we've got to find a way to make each of those drinks affordable, to execute them in a quick manner, right? And to know that that's what's coming, right? And be prepared for it. So for us, one thing that I do to keep our cost in line is we pour Beefeater out of a handle, like a 1.75 liter. It fits in a speed rail, right? And we can pour it at 51 cents an ounce. That's how I can afford to charge $8 for the cocktails, right? Is it heavy? Yeah, it's heavy. But it's also 51 cents an ounce, right? So, and it's just like, if you don't live in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, you've got to find ways to charge less than $12 for your drinks, right? I'm trying to serve a good cocktail for $8. That's one way that we get it done. We know it's coming. We know they're 20% of our sales on Friday and Saturday night, right? So we found a way to make it work and found a way to make it affordable. And we just embrace it now because we know that we make a good enough percentage on it. All right, bar design. Any other questions about menu design before we move on? Anything? We can come back to it if you guys want to, okay? All right, that's your back bar layout and bar design enhanced service. All right, I'm not going to call anybody out specifically, but I have some problems with some of the cocktail bars I go to because that's just who I am. Right? I come from that nightclub background, and sometimes I go into cocktail bars, and I just watch them work harder than what's necessary. I'm like, this is just not right. Why do you do this to yourself? Right? And these are the 7 things that I see done the most that I feel like are significant errors made by cocktail bars, and I think they're made by people who have never had to make drinks quickly. Right? These are the biggest errors that I see. Number 1, POSs and registers placed on the back bar instead of below the bar facing guests. Right? It's like this for us at the Pastry War because we adapted an existing bar. So maybe you find yourself in the same situation, right? But if you've got the opportunity to build your bar and save yourself 18 inches horizontally, which is the width of a cash drawer, right? You need to find that 18 inches and put your POSs below the bar top, right? Why? Does anybody work in a bar like this? Yeah? What's it like?
Well, working at a bar with the POS behind me,
Yeah, sure.
I have to turn my back to the customer.
Yeah.
I should never turn my back to them.
You're only doing one thing when you have to do that, right? Every single time. Like, I love when I can cash someone out, right? And the entire time that I'm spent cashing that person out, I can talk to someone else about cocktails, right? And even if I'm not talking, even if I'm trying to figure out where that obscure scotch is that they just ordered is at on the POS, at least I have this consciousness of what's happening in front of me, where I'm like, okay, cool. I got to get that girl over there. I'm going to get her in a second. Yeah?
I also have to usually take my guests' money at the same time as I'm taking your 6 Miller Lights, which is where my beer cooler is, right next to my POS machine. And they don't want to take 6 different payments at once, and they think I'm not giving them their change back, when really I'm trying to get 6 different people their change back at once, as well as grabbing them 6 Miller Lights and taking the booze off the back bar and trying to do all of these things to make my fee increase, and those things really I'm holding them up because my cash machine is 5 feet away from my well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm trying to make it faster and get everybody their
And if that's happening right there at the bar top, you have a chance to explain that to them, right? Instead of like that awkward moment, and this happens to me all the time when I go to bars where I'm like, I'm saying something and the bartender has to walk away to go to the back bar, right? And it's not their fault that our conversation was just cut short, right? It's just that the structure of the bar didn't allow them to continue to have a conversation with me. Yes? It is ugly, yeah, too. It is. It can break up the ambiance a whole lot, right? So people are constantly worried about, well, we don't do that because we don't want anything to spill on the POSs, right? We have nothing around the POS at Anvil. It is literally right next to a drink well, and we've never spilt anything on it, ever. Like it's just never happened, right? So maybe those fears are exaggerated, but even if you're afraid of that, like one thing that you can do is you can just put a plexi shield like right underneath the bar top that kind of covers up that area, right? So if anything comes over the bar top and onto the POS, you're protecting that in that regards, right? But for me, it's a big, big issue, right? People want to talk to us about our drinks, right? We're getting slammed at the same time on Friday and Saturday night. We're trying to figure out how to balance these two issues, right? Put the POSs below the bar. It'll really help you out in a lot of ways, okay? Too few speed reels with too many drink ingredients, okay? I'll show you what our well station looks like at Anvil. There's 70 bottles within 3 feet of us, right? That's how we put out 108 drinks. There's 70 bottles within 3 feet of us. There are speed reels everywhere, right? One really challenging part of working in a bar in Texas is that we can't batch our ingredients. It's illegal, right? So if we're gonna make 500 Negronis, we will be pouring from gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth every single time, right? I can't marry them together. I can't batch them out of the service well. I can't do those things legally, right? It's just TABC has a serious problem with us doing that. So we have to literally pour every single individual ingredient. We can do infusions and label those separately, right? So sometimes we say that the Damiana is salted, right? So we can do things like that, right? But we couldn't do like the cheater bottles that a lot of bars do, you know, your small bottles for like minor ingredients and stuff like that. We're not allowed to do it at all, right? But despite that, I watch people with menus that they're like, here, this is a menu with 12 cocktails on it, right? And it has 36 ingredients, and I'm going to run around the bar the entire time while you give me this drink order. And it's just like, that cannot happen. You've got to find more ways to get everything that you need directly in front of you. Let's say that you've got a confined amount of space, right? Our example from earlier, we're talking about putting a tiki bar, you know, somewhere, and we've got 2,000 square feet in space. That means that your tiki bar menu is now smaller. That's what that means, right? If you've got larger space and you've got the ability to design your back bar, you have enough money to put everything into it and spend a lot of money on that, you can get away with a more expansive menu. If you don't, right, it's more difficult, and you either need to figure out tricks to get more stuff in front of you, which I'll show you how we do that at Anvil, or you've got to par your menu down, because if you're running around the entire time, right, you're really doing a disservice to yourself as a bartender and a disservice to your guests as well, right? So maybe come up with a menu that rotates more frequently, right? So that you're keeping the bar experience interesting for people, but that every single time you've got as much in front of you as possible. All right, number 3, too many products on the bar top, limiting guest interaction. I've seen this trend recently where what used to be a 4-inch bar rail, right, you know, where we're making drinks, has now like all of a sudden become like 36 inches. And I'm like, what are you guys doing with all that space? Why do you need that, right? And there's so much stuff on the bar top now. It's like when you want to talk to a guest in some of these bars, it's like, hi, I'm Bobby, I'd like to take your order, right? And they can't even see you because you got so much shit in front of you, right? It's like, it's a pet peeve of mine, but I really think that it sends this message that our space and everything that we have right here is more important than taking care of you guys, right? Not to mention it makes taking care of the bar top really difficult. Like, how are you going to clean those areas up? How are you going to reach guests when you need to? And I think it makes service actually slower than what we might think. Find a way to put that stuff under the bar. Keep your bar top as clean as possible. There are things that function better when they're up top, right? Like juice, strainers, spoons. A lot of that stuff makes sense, right? But there's a lot of other ingredients that should really go down underneath, right? So that you can keep a bar top clean. You can have that interaction with guests, right? And you can also just get things out a little bit quicker. All right. 4, guests having limited access to drink menus. You're getting your ass kicked on Friday and Saturday, right? And all the drink menus are behind the bar. Why? Put them out in the bar top because you just saved yourself some room, right? Find ways to put them out on the floor so that guests have the opportunity to go, okay, cool, here's a menu, right? This bartender's doing great, and is going as quick as they can, right? But I'm going to look at this menu right now because it's in front of me, right? And the menu's well designed. It tells me everything that I need to know about the drinks that I'm about to order, right? Just save yourself some time. Number 5, relying too much on floor service is a means to save money on back bar costs. I know what it's like to open a bar. We're opening our 8th establishment right now. I know that it is difficult sometimes to spend money on making the bar longer and putting an additional well behind the bar. If you have the opportunity at all, do it, right? Nobody likes waiting 15 to 20 minutes for a drink with 4 servers on the floor who can't make cocktails because there's only 2 wells behind the bar, right? That works fine in restaurants where there's other, mixed service that's happening and there's other things that are coming out, right? But I'd prefer a scenario where there was a 3rd well and 4 more bar seats and 1 less server, right? Yes, that costs more money, but that's a better experience because people want to sit at the bar anyways. All right, number 6, which goes into this, placement of small bars at the end of narrow rooms. I don't understand why people do this. I mean, I'm assuming that they're just inheriting small bars that are at the end of small rooms, but let's say that this was our cocktail bar right here, right? It's happening all the time, and I think it's happening because people are trying to save money on the build-outs, right? It's 2 wells with 8 seats, right, and everything else happens at a table, right? There's this huge difference in the experience that the people with the 8 seats are going to have versus the people at the tables, right? It's dramatically different. It's not very efficient because the servers can't help in the same way that the bartenders can, right? So again, I think that, that going back into 5, but I think that we're not presenting the image of the bar that people see online over and over and over and over again. Did anybody go to Milk and Honey when it was just Milk and Honey? Right? Has anybody been back to Attaboy now that it's Attaboy? Right? I really like both bars, right? Milk and Honey had a very, very small bar, right? Maybe 6 feet long in the middle of the space, which was good. If you're going to have a small bar, you should put it in the middle of the space so people can watch, right? And then rows of tables on either side, right? Attaboy has kept the tables in the back and now has run the bar all the way to the front with a small little area by the window, okay? And that's really the only difference in the bar. Their net on the seats was probably -6 in a very, very small bar because they took away booths that were 4 tops and replaced them with single bar stools, right? But now they have 2 wells, right? 2 full wells, maybe a 3rd actually, right? And I can actually sit there and talk to Sam Ross, that's Milk and Honey, right? That's people want to go talk to that guy. He's awesome, right? It's like you get to see like the hair coming out of his shirt while he's shaking drinks and he's just, that's who he is. That's why you go to that bar. You want to see that guy. You don't want to sit at a table and watch him from afar, right? And it's a more efficient setup. It's more rewarding for the guests, right? I think it's a really nice transition that represents where we're at now with cocktails as opposed to where we were in the past. Milk and Honey was great. None of us would be here today without Milk and Honey. I really don't think so. But it fit with that time. As things are evolving, that bar has changed now, and it's about putting that experience in front of guests more. And then finally, bartenders should only be making drinks at peak volume, okay? And this is the thing that I think when we opened Anvil, I had never been to another major cocktail bar ever. We opened it in March of 2009. The first modern cocktail bar that I went to was PDT in September 2009. And this was the one thing that to me didn't make sense when I started going to other cocktail bars. I don't understand why cocktail bartenders have to do so much when they're working behind bars, right? And I do think that it is the thing that makes our jobs difficult. Our staff at Anvil, we have 5 bartenders. They only make drinks and cash you out. They don't do anything else. They don't wash tins. They don't wash glasses. They literally stand in front of people and help them pay for the drinks that they just made, and they do nothing else the entire night, right? And we do it with 2 bar backs, and there's 200 people in the bar. I see cocktail bartenders constantly forced with the task of washing their own tins, right? Because they've got 4 to 6 tins in their station, if they're lucky, right? And I'm like, why don't you guys just buy some more tins? We have 300 tins at Anvil. Like literally, we have 300 tins. So when you make a cocktail, you just put it behind you and the bar back washes it and he brings it back to you later and you never run out of tins, right? We have a ton of glassware. We have 3 times as much glassware in-house as we actually need to service our guests at any point in time, right? Those things cost money. Yes, they do, right? We opened Anvil on an extreme budget, but they're also the way that bars do volume, right? You have to have that much equipment, right? Your bar staff has to be providing drinks and making drinks and not doing anything else at any given point in time. So when we set up for Anvil, right? Even though we did that on a shoestring budget, right? Me and my best friend built it. I did the electrical system. I mean, you couldn't have opened a bar with less money, right? The one thing that I felt like I had to have was we have to have a ton of tins. We have to have a ton of glassware. We have to have a ton of tools, right? Because I had never worked in an environment where that wasn't the case, right? Right from nightclubs into craft cocktail bars that I was setting up. And for me, I was like, this is how this works, right? We'll pay another bar back, right? When we got busy on Fridays and Saturdays, we upped the number of bar backs that we needed from 1 to 2 because they're really happy making $15 an hour plus tips, right? And you pay for that in 2 drinks. Why would you not do that? I don't understand why that wouldn't be the case. Yes?
My question was going to be, what was the compensation for the barbacks? $15 an hour plus tips?
Yes. Our barbacks used to make 10%, but the staff elected to give them a raise to 15%. I stay out of those issues. So our barback that has literally worked for me for 8 years is our highest paid employee at Amble. He makes more money than everybody else, including our GM and me. So he's awesome. But he's the best human being I know. He's the reason that they get to only make drinks and not have to worry about anything else, right? He makes the bar go. He makes the bar work. It's the only reason that it works, right? And he's trained every single one of our barbacks that we've put through into our other bars. So he trained Candido, who is now our head barback at the Pastry War. But I think it's a really important issue. And this applies to if you're going to do a lot of volume. Now, certainly on Mondays and Tuesdays, like if you're working in a slow bar, wash your own tins, right? But if you have the opportunity to think about how much of your time you're spending doing things that don't involve taking care of guests, and you're the primary service personality in your bar, be it a restaurant, a bar that gets crushed on the weekends, if you're trying to take that next step and serve some more drinks, if you're considering an expansion, whatever it is, I feel like if you go back and go to a good nightclub and watch how they really work, the bartenders don't do anything else. They never restock their wells. They just take care of guests. That's their job, right? It's the most important thing that I feel like our bartenders need to be able to do at Anvil is spend the most time possible taking care of guests and not doing anything else. And I see this mistake happen all the time. In really busy cocktail bars around the country, they're working with 3 tins and they're spending so much time resetting the station every single time. And I'm like, just go buy 30 tins and set yourself up, on a Friday and Saturday the right way. I think it's a really important error that I see made a lot. Yes?
Are there any things that you have found having barbacks in a cocktail bar is markedly different from having barbacks in the high volume clubs? Are there different things that you train or that they train each other on?
Actually, I think a lot of the times when we see cocktails, and I'm going to talk about this, is actually my last slide, is don't forget to train your support staff. But I think that when we see barbacks in cocktail bars, a lot of the times now, those are people who are training to become bartenders, which I think is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? But I prefer a scenario where I get to work with a barback that has literally done that job for 8 years, that gets compensated really, really well, and is the primary reason why we can do as much volume at the bar as we do, right? So in that situation, I have trained him the way that I trained barbacks when I used to work at nightclubs, right? He is not someone that is waiting to become a craft cocktail bartender, right? And he is compensated very, very fairly for doing that because we recognize how important he is. I think it's just a mentality difference in the industry. I think that we think as support staff as people that we can get away with cheap and affordable wages, right? Or people that are in the process of moving up, right? But that person who's moving up, in the ranks, is really hurting us on Fridays and Saturdays because they're not as capable as someone who could have done that job for 4 years and might be better in that situation. Right, so that's how I think about it. I also understand we make our staff go through barback training shifts too. They're just additional barbacks in addition to Isaias, who's our guy at Anvil. Right, they're additions to him, and he walks around and tells them what to do and stuff like that, and kind of creates an authority in the bar that there is no difference between the bartenders and the barbacks. Right, if anything, everybody does what Isaias says. Right, so I think it just depends. If you have the PDT cocktail book, you might be familiar with this. With this section in the book. It's a layout that describes how PDT works, which I love PDT. I love Jim. I love the bar staff there. It's one of my favorite bars in New York. We're talking 40-ish seats, right? Small cocktail bar at the end, 8 seats, no, 12 seats, I'd say, right? So I think that's fine in a smaller venue, right? It's not the same area that we see where we've got 2 bartenders at a small bar taking care of 80 guests who are sitting at tables, right? I think that ratio is off. in this situation, right, which might be more similar to what you find in a small bar or a restaurant, right? Number one on top, we've got custom menus or custom napkin boxes. Number two, we've got double speed rails at each station. 3, centrally located dishwasher, right? In this situation, it does not make sense with the limited space that they have in New York to have a bar back that's washing dishes for them, right? They're responsible for that themselves. 4, centrally located glass chiller. 5, refrigerator for vermouth. 6, custom sink with built-in strainer. 7, custom insulated steel garnish tray. And 8, hooks to hang strainers and a basket to hold the ice scoop, okay? It's a great setup. It's a great, really basic setup. It's everything that you need to execute, really, really good quality cocktails, right? The PDT book the menu that they put in front of you is pretty large, so they're spending a lot of time pulling things off the back bar, right? I think it's a perfect design for the bar that they're in. If we put this same design into Anvil, we would be screwed, right? We would totally be screwed because we'd have a dishwasher behind the bar, right? There's activity that doesn't need to be happening behind our bar. All our dirties go to the back. They get washed in the back, and then they come back out, right? So just as like a difference of perspective, right? We don't have vermouth refrigerator, right? Because that vermouth refrigerator there would be like a full 3 feet away from this well, right? And there's no way that we could possibly keep up if that was the case. So our vermouth goes in cold boxes on the bar top, right? So just a difference in perspective, right? And it depends on what venue you find yourself in, right? I think this is great for PDT. I think it's a really solid restaurant bar design, right? It would not work for us. We would not be capable of executing the volume that we do with this type of setup. This is Nomad in New York. Nomad in New York does a ton of volume, a ton, right? It may not seem like it because the room isn't very big, but on Fridays and Saturdays, I've been in that room with 80 people, right? Then there's all the covers that they're doing on the restaurant floor and the library room next door. I think it's one of the highest volume cocktail bars in the country. Their primary bar that you walk up to that has 15 to 16 seats at it has 3 wells, right? And then off to the side, there's a separate service well that's kind of boxed in by 2 walls. It's a darker area, clearly not for guests, right? They know that, right? And it's a way where a lot of service is coming out. It's a really, really well-designed bar. Look at this bar. It's got all the marks of people who really know how to put out a lot of drinks, okay? So everything is labeled. Everything. Everything is labeled. We've got glass rinsers here. We've got a sink. We've got wells, multiple ice stations, right? I would go with more tins. That's just me. There's a lot of tins there, right? There's a lot of light underneath the bar so you can see what's going on, which is a problem that we have at Anvil, right? But it's organized. It makes sense. It's prepared for what's coming, right? At all times. It's just always prepared for what's coming. This is Anvil, which I don't have as nice of a picture, a good layout as PDT. I was like, man, this looks sloppy. But this is our bar. So I heard recently that a very famous bartender has developed a bar station that you can order from Perlick or something like that for like $4,500, right? Which is cool. Like if you got the money, spend it. That's great, right? This is the Bobby Heugel bar station. It will run you $750, right? That's literally how much money we spend on our bar stations. And when we had a little more money after we got successful, we considered doing custom stainless bar stations, and then I was like, this is just the most efficient station that I've worked at, and we're going to leave it the way that it is, right? So this is what our station looks like. You can't tell because of the lighting, but there's a speed rail here, a speed rail here, a double speed rail here, a speed rail here, and a speed rail here on this side, right? Every single one of those rails is full and has ingredients in it. They're all labeled, right? This is our juice box here. It's cold. The crushed ice feeds into the rail and drains off, right? This is our vermouth box here, right? The one thing about our bar that we didn't do very well when we opened it is we didn't put enough plumbing in. We'll be rebuilding the bar in January. So there's not a glass rinser for rinsing cocktails that don't have herbs or cream or anything in them at all, right? So we will switch to that at that point in time. Is like if you stir a Manhattan in a glass, you're going to rinse it and reuse it. Right, that'll be the only time that Anvil bartenders are ever asked to clean anything. The bitters are up top, right? This table is 2 feet wide, right? And so are the boxes that are behind it and the bitters box, right? And that's all that's on the bar top here. And then we've got a small fruit basket over here. Directly to the left of the station is a POS. There's a POS between every single bar station, right? So there's 5 bar stations behind the bar. There's a POS between every single one of them, and they're all at the bottom. This little steel table here we buy for $200, right? Then it's 24 inches wide. Then we strap speed rails on the side of it, right? And then we just buy L brackets. Does everybody know what an L bracket is? Just like a piece of angle iron, right? We cut it to fit the table. We bolt it to the 2 legs, right? So that we've got 3 types of glassware: rocks glasses, Collins glasses, and cocktail glasses at the bottom. Okay, that table costs us $300 in custom work when we're done with it. We buy the wells used. We put a piece of plexi in between them, right, with angle iron on that and silicone those, right, and then the speed rails. And that's how we set up a station. And I really, at $9.25 a drink, cannot afford to really spend money on anything else, right? And it really works for us. I mean, we put out 108 drinks, right? Everything is in front of you. There are maybe 3 or 4 cocktails where you got to turn around and grab something weird off the bar. And in that situation, we just buy additional of those ingredients because we can't use the cheater bottles or batch anything, right? And they just sit behind the bartenders on the bar top, right? They make the drink goes directly behind them. Bar back comes and swings up and down all night long, grabbing dirties, right? Washes them, brings them back, and redistributes them, right? And that's how we set up our bar. If we chill a cocktail glass, right, we didn't have the money to buy refrigeration when we open, so it just gets crushed ice. The crushed ice gets dumped, right, and then we use the glass after that. When I rebuild the bar, we'll have glass rinsers and we'll have freezers running all the way down. Those are the 2 things that I think are wrong with our bar. Do we have the money now to order custom stations? Yes, we do. Will we do it? No, I just think this works better, right? I also like that the equipment, like our setup and everything, is not delicate. A lot of the new cocktail stations that you see coming out, right, especially ones with like 36-inch like metal troughs and stuff like that, right? That's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean, right? Those that are coming out, I find them really, really just delicate. When I'm building a bunch of cocktails on them, I'm making 12 drinks at a time and stuff like that. There's absolutely no way that I can do that quickly. I have to worry about how delicate the stations are because if I hit the tin too hard, right, with a room with 200 people in it, I understand if we're talking about really nice service in a fine dining restaurant, but when I'm putting out drinks for 200 people and I'm banging them out, I need to just not worry about it, right, and just go. If you do that with a lot of the new stations that are coming out, your stuff falls over a lot. It gets bent, it gets dented, it gets replaced. We just use plastic mats and what's a 6-inch trough right here. We use 6-inch, right, and that's just a steel trough for us. The bar top's steel. But it's just a steel trough. It's really, really durable. It's stable. I don't ever have to worry about like hitting it and like things moving or anything like that. Yes?
I agree with the wells and cocktail bars are starting to get like really deep. But have you experienced any problems with the ergonomics of having a double rail, a deep ice well, and then you're like constantly leaning over to make drinks, and if you're 200 people deep, does that ever become a problem for the physical body of your staff?
Yes, it has been a problem for people that are 5'6" and shorter, right? And it was a problem when Alba came to work for us. Like, I'll be honest, she wouldn't mind me saying that either. She was like, my back hurts a lot working here, right? And we were like, well, you're the shortest person that's ever worked here, right? and Kevin is 6'4". I built Anvil with my best friend Kevin. He's 6'4". I'm 6'1". Justin was 6 foot when he worked for us. The 2 people that we hired after that were around 6 feet tall, right? We built it off of a bar that existed previously, and then we extended that down the room, right? So we didn't even decide the height or the depth or anything in that situation. And so when we had some shorter people come to work with us, yeah, it was a problem. It was a big problem, and I think it's an issue. I understand the double speed rails could be an issue and could be a problem, right? But even in this situation, if you just put them on the sides like most people don't, right, you'd still get more bottles here if you had a single speed rail, right? Which you can make that decision for your bar than most bottles that I see in speed rails behind bars currently. When we did our speed and efficiency seminar at Tales of the Cocktail, Alex Day actually had one of the best layouts for this, and maybe email him and ask him if he'd share it with you, where he talks about where the bar die location is at. The bar die is the base of the bar. It's the vertical base of the bar, right? Where the bar die location is at right? And then from that point, how deep the bar top is, right? So how much space is reserved for guests, right? And then how much space crosses over into the wells, right? And he specifically talked about how if you're just doing cocktail service, right, that you want the bar die to be closer to the guest and further away from you so that you can tuck more of that underneath the bar, right? Also, in that situation where if you're just doing cocktail service, they don't need to have a plate in front of them. The bar top is the same depth no matter what, provided that you're saving enough room for the guest. Okay, so I think that that's another trick that you can use depending upon your situation, right? But I think these are things that people don't really consider until they've done it multiple times or they've been to a seminar where people are talking about it. We definitely didn't consider it when we built Anvil. It was just like, and bar top go, and we're tall enough for everything, right? And we can pour beef eater out of handles, and it's, and it wasn't an issue. But I think now, that's a really important conversation, that you need to have when you're building that bar. How deep is that bar top? What is the function that you're trying to accomplish, in the bar? What type of staff are you going to have working there? When we built Julep, we built it differently. I said we use the same setups, but we built it differently, right? Because we knew that Alba was going to be working behind the bar more than we would. And we don't work the same, right? Like we're totally different physical human beings, right? So we work differently. One thing that I've also thought about too is almost all bar stations can go on 4 legs, right? Instead of like the T shape that you see for a lot of affordable wells, right? So if you can do that, or you can have someone do that in a custom manner, right? If you put a horizontal bracket between the two of them, this is an old catering trick. I do things on the cheap if you guys aren't catching on it. It's an old catering trick. You ever seen people put PVC pipes underneath folding tables, right? So they'll put 4 PVC pipes under the 4 legs of a folding table to raise it up so that it's a bar top height. That's how you do that, right? And then you just put a cloth on the front and nobody knows the difference, okay? You could do the same thing with bar stations, right? Where at the beginning of the shift when the bar station's empty, you could have different sets of PVC pipe, right? Put them underneath the 4 legs, provided that you have a horizontal bar. So when those PVC pipes go under the leg and hit the horizontal brace that goes this way, right? If you had 3 different types of sets, your bar staff could literally adjust the well height for them, right? For their different heights. So Alba can come in and put the 6-inch PVC pipe underneath that, right? And I'm going to come in and take it off, or whatever works best, for each of us. The well is empty at the beginning of the shift. Everybody gets to choose how they're going to set things up in a way that would work best for them. So it's another trick that you could possibly use in that situation. But I am waiting for somebody to do the bar station that you can jack up with your foot.
Like barber chair?
Yeah. I think that would be actually really, really cool. And if you're working in a bar 50 to 60 hours a week, right, which is what it was like when we opened Anvil, you're working 50 to 60 hours a week, right? You're working 12-hour shifts. You're standing behind that bar. The amount of wear and tear that it can have on your body, I do think that there are things that you could do to make it easier. For us at Anvil, it's not a big problem. Also, for whatever reason, in every single one of our bars, I think that we have a majority of female staff working behind the bar, but at Anvil, it's only guys for some reason, which I don't understand, because I think female bartenders are better than male bartenders. But yes?
Another thing for speed, efficiency, and also water saving and stuff, we're getting ready to put foot pedals on our sinks. We're not going underneath. They're actually pretty cheap to install because eye washing stations and places like chemical plants have to have them, and so you can go to Home Depot and get those.
Yeah.
That way it's foot pedals, you're not going underneath, and
Yeah.
you're saving water.
I think, again, though, I worked with that at Boilermaker when I guest shifted there last week, and I wear size 13, so the water was on a lot. Right? So, again, it's just like physical preference on who you are as a person and how you set up your station. Right? But I do think, though, that our setup really works for the number of drinks that we put out, the volume that we do. Nothing's too delicate. Everything is there in front of you. You can make 108 cocktails and not have to move more than a foot one way or the other. And then POSs to the left. I like our setup a whole lot, and it really works for us. And it's also affordable, which I think that a lot of the times when you hear people talk about bar design, they are speaking from a very, very wealthy perspective. Right? Like when I go to some of the seminars at Tales, which I love, but sometimes I think that some of the New York presenters are forgetting that we can't afford to charge $15 a cocktail, right? That these are people who are maybe trying to open their first bar, who have limited, investment, limited resources, right? And this is a way that we found works for us. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. This is Julep. This is Alba's bar that we just opened. We got better at things. And this is a really simple bar. What you can't see here is that there are a row of tables that come like this and a row of tables that go like this, right? So the tables form an L around the curve bar here. Some tricks that I tried to employ when we were designing this bar. This here is the service bar area, right? And then there are two wells on the front here, okay? The service bar area is clearly delineated as a service bar area, right? The bar top here is copper. The bar top here is white tile. It also says service bar right here. Because it's not, one pet peeve that I have about bartenders is they get upset when guests get in the service well, and I'm like, well, they don't know it's a service well because they're not bartenders, right? So stop being a dick about it. So if you design and set up your bar in a way that communicates that to them, then you might not have that problem all the time. Here, huh?
Did it work?
Yeah, it works. So here in this situation, you can see that we have bar stools in the front, right? But we actually take away the front bar space here. This is cabinetry. The cabinetry is full of glasses, right? So that the service personality can help to resupply the bar so that we're giving them something to do while they're waiting on drinks. This cabinet right here, there's a POS station behind a door right here and a POS station on this side, right? So that both people can talk about the same tabs. It's like, hey, can you look at that tab? Is that what they had? Or, you know, this is the drink that I served them earlier when they were at the bar and they moved to a table, right? So the service bar setup that we have right here, tons of additional julep cups, glassware, all of that stuff exists right there. So we're giving the servers something to do while they're standing and waiting on drinks. We've created a dramatic difference in what people perceive as public space and what they perceive as workspace, right? The bar, this is not the best picture, but it's the best one that I had. The bar wells are right here on the bar top, right? And then in the back, there's this large ice bin, right? It's this large crushed ice bin with this angel in the middle. So underneath that ice bin is all the additional liquor. Then there's freezers on the back side of it, a dishwasher, more freezers, right? And then behind that is the actual back bar, right? So you kind of have to run around this ice bin if you're going to pull stuff off the back bar. But we found that 90% of the drink orders in our cocktail bars come off the cocktail menu. So for us, we want to do that 90% as efficiently as possible, right? And we'll bite the bullet on the 10% a little bit. The other thing that does is this is our kitchen door right here, right? The bar backs can constantly move from the kitchen to the service well without getting in the other bartender's way, right? And then this door right here goes to the bathroom, so they can also access the bathrooms. Keep an eye on that a lot, right? To the left here, this is a door that comes out from the bathroom hallway so that they can access the front of the house area, either from this side or from this side. And then back here, there's a door that goes out to the patio. That door that goes out to the patio actually has a wall in it, right, with POS stations here, right, and then entryway here for guests. And this little bitty 8-foot wall, it blocks the view of the POSs that are being used by the servers, but it also creates a 3-foot corridor, right, so that our bar backs can continue to cut that way and then access the patio door too, right? So they can access every part of the space that they need to. Back of the house, front of the house, bathrooms, this area here to get out to the patio and never have to walk through a guest, right? It's our little bartender highway, right, or bar back highway, right? It really helps us be more efficient behind the bar, and I don't necessarily think that people always think of what support staff flow should be like when designing a bar. This was actually a really big space for us. We have 4,500 square feet, right? We love the building, though. It was built in 1890. So in this situation, we didn't have to worry about whether or not the ice well behind the bar was going to take up too much valuable space. Because we had the space, we went ahead and built it that way and created that little bar back highway, which I think was the right decision for us. I think that typically what you would have seen happen is the bar would have been set back, right, so that you could fit in, however many more seats or squeeze in 20 more people, right? I find that our service to guest ratio in this situation is a much, much better experience, right? That we're limiting how many people could potentially fill the bar on Friday or Saturday night, right? But because we're providing such a better experience, we start to win on Sunday through Thursday because we get return people during the week, right? Which I think is a really important thing to consider. Anvil gets so busy on Fridays and Saturday nights that sometimes I worry that we're not providing the experience that we want to provide, right? And you should be honest about these things, right? So I worry sometimes that we're not providing the experience that we want to provide. So we talk to people a whole lot about coming back Sunday through Thursday, right? I wanted to avoid that conversation when I designed Julep, right? I wanted the experience to be the same no matter what, Friday through Saturday. We tried to resolve that issue at Anvil when we opened, when we were all of a sudden way, way busier than I ever thought we would be, by holding a line, and people in Houston got really, really upset about that, right? They're just not willing to be told that they cannot come into a bar. So now we just let things work out. Everybody can come in. If it gets crowded and you don't want to be in a crowded bar, right, there's other bars in the area that you can go hang out at, right? Our regulars know that. They know that their nights are Sunday nights, right, or Wednesday night or Thursday night, right? But then now we have this whole other crowd of regulars who want to meet people on Fridays and Saturdays, and we're happy to embrace them there as well. So it's just a really democratic guest process for us at Anvil. But we wanted to kind of create a little bit more of a higher end experience at Julep. So we made sure that we had lots of pathways for the staff to walk. We decided that less seats meant more, right? And these are all decisions that I think people should at least think about and consider before they open the door, as opposed to kind of how things went for us at Anvil, where things just happen, right? Which is fine. When your first bar, you're going to go through that experience, right? But if someone can introduce that content to you now, I think it could be helpful. This is our service bar sign. It's pretty too. It's not like, don't order a drink here. Staff training. Is the staff capable of executing your bar concept in an efficient and knowledgeable manner? Right? So going back to that tiki menu that we talked about at the beginning, right? You're going to open a tiki bar with however many drinks on the menu, okay? Because that would just be really, really cool, right? And you've got one bartender that's going to work in it, right? This is a bad idea. This is how bars don't do well when they open. Where are you going to get all these bartenders that know how to do this, right? You're going to put out 40 drinks on your cocktail menu to all your guests that are come in, and you only know one of the staff members that are going to work there, right? You're setting yourself up for a lot of problems there. I think that the most important thing that you do when you open a bar, right, is not to hire someone that's responsible for the bar program, not to hire a consultant, right? It's to hire capable staff members who are going to be able to execute what the goals are for your bar program, right? If you don't know who those people are, you need to be less ambitious with your cocktail menu right from the beginning, right? It doesn't mean that you can't grow into that, right? When we opened Anvil, we literally wrote 6 drinks on the chalkboard, right, for the first 2 months. When we got done with that, things got better, right? And now we have 108 drinks that we pass out, right? So we evolved in those ways as well. I think that window for doing that is less possible nowadays, because as soon as a new cocktail bar opens in any city in the country, people go and write reviews about it, right? It happens all the time. So you've got to be on your A game for the first 2 weeks, right? But being on your A game doesn't mean that you have to put out a 40-drink menu, right? It can mean that you can put out 8 to 10 solid cocktails, right? Have a staff that's capable of executing them and talking about them, right? And know that people will come back and want more, and then give them more when you're ready for it, and when they get to the point where they want more, and grow the menu in that regards, right? But I think that when people think about bars, they decide what the concept is going to be. They decide what the menu is going to be before they know the personalities that are going to be capable of executing it. And I think you can go concept first, then personalities, and then menu. But if you do it in the opposite way, I think you're creating a problem for yourself, right? So I think you have to be really, really honest about what you're trying to achieve behind your bar, and think about what the staff is capable of. Let's say that you want to improve those people, though, right? These are what I think of like the 7 steps that our staff goes through when they come to work for us at Anvil, okay? We do a 12-week training program, which no one ever makes it through in 12 weeks. You get tested at the end of every single week. If you don't pass, you repeat, right, for however long it takes you. I would say that generally our staff takes 5 to 6 months to train each, right? But there are 12 weeks that they have to go through. As they're going through this program, right, they're getting to a point where they're learning things about each of these 7 areas, okay? Standards of service, right? So this comes first. If we've got people who are going to be in-house taking care of guests, they have to know our views on hospitality, and they have to immediately get indoctrinated into that culture, right? Because we can't have someone who's taking care of a guest, right, and doesn't quite understand where we stand on hospitality, right, and then have to be constantly apologizing and saying that person's new, right? So we put them in positions to take care of guests and to discuss guests as they absorb the culture that's around them. So they start off bar backing with Isaias a little bit more, right? And over time, as we feel more comfortable with them, we'll introduce them into guest interactions more and more after that. Okay? Couple weeks. Cocktail recipes, right? If they're going to be behind the bar working, right, and we're going to pass out a drink menu with 108 cocktails on it, they have to know how to make all 108 drinks, right? Because we don't have time for them to look up a recipe. So the first 3 weeks of training is they've got to get down the 108 drink recipes. They have to. This is also the time where I'm kind of evaluating whether or not a person is capable of working for us. It's not a small task. 108 cocktails, right? If they're not capable of doing this, they might struggle with other aspects of the job, right? So we're in this evaluation period too, where it's like, are you capable of executing this task every single day, right? Those are the quick things. 2 to 3 weeks, we need to get there really fast, right? You've got to absorb the hospitality culture in the bar, right? And you've got to be able to put out, drinks according to spec and what we have, okay? All right, then we get into product knowledge. Spirits and cocktails, taste, and history, okay? So we want our staff to be intimately familiar with how ingredients taste, what their background is, and what the story of cocktails are, right? So we've got 108 drinks on the menu. I would expect that every single person, after working with us for a few months, would be able to say that is what that drink should taste like, right? As opposed to that's what the spec or the recipe is for that cocktail. Because there's a difference, right? We're dealing with seasonal ingredients. Sometimes there are substitutions, right? If we're going through a lime crisis like we went through earlier this year, I would expect that our staff would still be able to put out the best possible margarita despite the fact that the limes are really shitty. Okay? They need to be able to do that. It's a task that they have to learn. It's a knowledge that has to grow, and it only grows over time, right? Through constantly tasting and talking and discussing drinks, right? I would expect that the management members of our staff would say, hey, limes this week are really off, guys. We're going to have to watch this, right, and communicate that to the staff, and then the staff would go, okay, cool. And at the beginning of shifts when they're making drinks, they would be having conversations about, I really think that we should adjust the AML spec this way, right? I think that last words are going to taste better like this, right? They need to gain that knowledge as quickly as possible, okay? They also need to talk to people about drinks, right? When people come into the bar and they quiz people and they're like, well, do you know what this is? And I would expect that our staff would be able to say yes, right, and make that person feel better about the cocktail bar that they've chosen to come to, right, which requires a lot of reading. So I always tell our staff that you guys have the same responsibilities that sommeliers do in restaurants. You're just bartenders, right? So sommeliers are responsible for general wine knowledge. We'll put a lot of content in front of you. We expect you to read that content. You'll be tested on it, but you're also just responsible for general knowledge about cocktails and spirits because you've chosen to do this job, right? So you need to keep yourself fresh at all times. You need to know these things at all times. All right. Speed and efficiency. Quickly making rounds, not drinks, with speed while juggling multiple guest needs with foresight. This does not happen right away. It just doesn't. I mean, you get people who click with your setup and click with your staff and click with your bar and put drinks out quicker than others, right? But ultimately, by the end of 6 months, we'd like the difference between the new person and the person who's been 3 years to be 10 to 15%. There's some time there, but for the most part, John, who is our most recent hire at Anvil, right, in 3 months needs to be 85% as fast as Terry, who's our GM and who's been there for years, right? We need to get people to that point. We shouldn't have huge differences between people who can really hustle and put things out and people who are new, right? Our responsibility in training is to close that gap as quickly as possible because the guest who ends up in front of John's station at the turn at Anvil on a Saturday night and the guest who's front in Terry's station, they should have ideally a similar experience, right? Which is a hard thing to do. I think that most people do this by just putting people behind a bar and saying, you'll get faster over time, right? That's how I was trained in every single bar program that I worked at and how we trained people when we opened Anvil, right? But there are ways that you can teach people to be faster, and we'll talk about those. The most important part, though, is to teach people how to make rounds, not to make drinks, okay? So if someone orders a French 75, an Aviation, and a Manhattan from you, right, that's a order in and of itself. It's an order for a round of drinks, right? And you will make that round. You don't make the French 75, the Aviation, and the Manhattan. You learn to make the round as quickly as possible, okay? So you don't touch the lemon juice more than once, right? You don't touch the gin more than once, right? You don't, the way that you do those things, you're talking about rounds, not drinks. Cocktail development. Adjustment of house specs, which we talked about. Classic cocktail resurrection and original cocktail creation. So we're trying to teach people how to be the bartenders that they thought that they were going to get to be when they took the job with us at this point, right? They've gone through the other things, right? And now they're interested in learning how to create cocktails and telling people this is my drink and things like that, right? The fun part of the job. That takes months and months to get there because I need you to adjust the margarita for the lime crisis before you can put a cocktail in front of me that you created with lime juice in it, right? One just comes before the other. We need you to understand cocktail history. We need you to challenge the recipes that are on the menu currently so that we can constantly get better ourselves, right? If you want to develop an original cocktail, that's great. You need to know how it fits into the menu, all of these different issues, which goes into cocktail financials, right? I'm really, really happy that you like chartreuse, right? We cannot afford to pour 3 ounces of it into a cocktail, right? It's a delicious drink. We're never going to put it on the menu and stop serving it, right? It's just, that's a reality of owning a bar in Houston. We need them to understand why. We need to understand what the alternatives are to your 3-ounce chartreuse cocktail. We need to take that drink and make it a financial reality for the bar program that doesn't get away from your vision for what that cocktail could be, okay? I mean, we cannot serve chartreuse swizzles at Anvil. We can't afford to do it, all right? We'll serve them to people if people come in, right? But we're really liking Dahl and Genepi these days, right? So all of those things, we need them to understand that because if they're going to be putting out drinks for people, they need to be conscious of the financial impact that they're going to have on the bar at all times. Someone comes in and they're ordering I want a Pappy Van Winkle 15-year rye Manhattan. Cool. They need to immediately understand that you cannot ring Manhattan on the POS and then charge them $12 for it, all right? And then management and training. As soon as we get out of our training period with our staff, okay, as soon as we've gone through that entire program, they understand basics of cocktail financials and 6 and everything else above, right? I don't feel like the learning process stops. So immediately when they get done with that and they've passed training, so to speak, they begin to help manage the bar. And we talk to people about this when they come to work for us. So there are 5 tasks that happen every single week as part of weekly management, right? We have a 6-person bar staff at Anvil, right? So we'll find something else for the other person to do, or we're rotating a new person, someone's going through training, whatever it is. But everybody does a different job. Someone does liquor inventory, someone does beer inventory, someone does food inventory, someone does dry goods inventory, someone does scheduling costs. And we literally have the staff do each one of those tasks every single week, and then we compile that into a weekly report that we as a staff sit down and talk about every single Tuesday. Our liquor cost was this Tuesday. Our food cost was this. This is our sales forecast for the following week, right? And we talk about those issues every single week. If you get good at doing liquor inventory, it's time for you to do something else. And then we rotate it so that every single person learns a different part of bar management when they're behind the bar. If they get past that point, right, which now we're 2 to 3 years in, we start talking about management opportunities, and then they become people that are responsible for training people. Okay, so that's how our bar staff grows. I really feel like, our bar staff does well behind the bar. We financially, we run a busy bar, but they could certainly make more money if they became the cocktail director of another program, or they went and worked in a nightclub. I made $180,000 a year when I was working in a nightclub, right, for 2 years when I was in Illinois. It was awesome, right? I mean, they could go take that job, and I'll get you in a second. They could go take that job at any moment, right? So for us, I feel like we owe them so much more than financials. We owe them a learning experience, right? Where if they're going to work that hard, they need to constantly be learning with us. And I tell people all the time, if you've reached the point where you're not learning when you're working with us anymore, right, let's either talk about ways that you would be interested in learning more, or it's time for you to find a different job, right? Because I'm not doing you the service that I really feel like you deserve because you work too hard to not be in a position where you're learning anymore, right? And I mean, for me, I'm always able to find ways for people to learn more, so that's not really a big issue. Maybe they get to a point where there's a good opportunity, and now with the knowledge that they've acquired by working for us, they can go and take that opportunity and really capitalize on it. Yes?
I was wondering if you could just talk a little more about how you structure that last part. Like, do you have your GM checking their work, or just
Our GM is responsible for compiling the report that then gets distributed to all of our staff during the weekly meeting. So that's his job, and then he makes it the responsibility of the other staff to get those things done, and he checks their work every single week at Anvil. So Terry checks the work of everyone every single week and is responsible for training them on how to do liquor order and stuff like that, right? So he's responsible for that. Cool. This is what our training program more specifically looks like, though. We won't go through every single one of these with a whole lot of time. But this is week 1. We call it Deer in the Headlights. We've got bar profile, goals, basic rules of service, basic bar tour, all the things that you would do on the first day of working somewhere, right? Day 2, rules of cocktail methodology, glossary of bar terms, POS training, proper bar maintenance, opening procedures, day 2 test. So it's laid out, it's specific every single day. When someone comes into the bar, they've got their binder with them. We're checking off what they haven't done in that binder, right? And it's just something, that at any point in time, Terry's not there 7 days a week, so he'll ask Jesse, hey Jesse, John's on bar shift, whatever, right? Can you take care of him and walk him through those things? And Jesse's like, cool, I got that, no problem, right? 2, the broken spirit, right? We're literally trying to break you at this point. You're having a glossary of bar terms test. You're responsible for the first 50 cocktails on the 100 list, basic beer knowledge. You've got to read the first half of Imbibe by David Wondrick's basic beer knowledge test, 100 list test part 1. If you don't pass, you don't continue, okay? 3, part 2, 51 through 100, fortified wine knowledge. You got to finish Imbibe. You got to take a test on all of those things, fortified wine knowledge, the 100 list, and the Imbibe test, okay? Week 4, the tired soldier. Basis of cocktail balance. We're going to talk about citrus and stirred cocktails separately. Basics of speed and efficiency. Create 3 twists on 3 primary classics, right? So we're not letting them do a whole lot. We're just like, okay, so if you want to change a Tom Collins, what would you do, right? Well, you could change the base spirit. Cool. All right. What are you going to use instead? I'm going to use this. All right. Awesome. We're going to change the citrus from lemon to Texas grapefruit because that's in season. All right. Cool. So now we got to adjust the sweetness. Speaking of sweetness, you could flavor that syrup if you wanted to or change it to another liqueur, and then you're going to put something sparkling on top. It doesn't have to be soda. It could be something else. And they're like, wow, the world is so amazing, right? So, and they've got to come up with a drink that does that, right? So week 5. The server, right here we're starting to talk about setting the table by Danny Meyer. We're really focusing on hospitality. We challenge them to find ways to be hospitable that don't have anything to do with like regular service, right? So if it's like find a girl a safety pin, this is something recent that somebody did. I found this girl a safety pin. I went around the bar and asked guys if they had a dry cleaning safety pin in their jacket because the strap on her dress broke. Like you got to come up with examples like that for us during this week. Week 6, balancing act, speed and taste test for predetermined drinks. This is another really, really big hump, okay? So, and we've adjusted the time recently. I don't remember what it was. But we literally, after the Tuesday meeting is over, we all sit in front of you and watch you make 4 drinks. And if you don't do it in time, right, you don't pass, which we all thought would be like really easy. And then we all did it ourselves just to be fair after the first person did it. And we were like, this sucks, man. You guys stop looking at me, right? And it's really, really hard, but the entire time, we talk to the person the whole time. They have to have a conversation with us. We just make things up. We're talking about what we did that morning, how things are going, their cat, whatever it is, right? We're just talking to them the whole time. They have to be all smiles. They have to talk to us the entire time. And then the staff will watch them, and they're like, you touched the lemon juice twice, right, the whole time, right? And that's how we teach people to become faster. They usually take 2 to 3 times to get that down. We're moving into basic spirits at this point, rum, reading material assigned on rum. In this case, it's not a book. We just have a compilation of a bunch of different material. Tiki cocktail creation, rum test. And then we're also down here, we're getting into a blind taste test on rum, okay? So which one is Cruzan Blackstrap, which one's Smith & Cross, which one's blah, 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 right? Triple threat. We've got a speed and taste test again, basics of spirit tasting with whiskey, basics of cocktail creation. We're starting to allow them to kind of venture into the idea of creating original cocktails. Advanced speed and efficiency training part 1, read-assigned material on whiskey and blind whiskey taste, right? So when it says triple threat, we're in this position where every single week they're responsible for passing a speed and efficiency test, for doing a blind taste of some sorts, and being responsible for some type of content knowledge, right? Same thing in week 8. It's basically the same situation. We're just getting a little bit more specific. We've got shift 5 as a speed and taste test for 40 random drinks. We literally sit there and watch you make 40 drinks. Then at this point, we're in a novice bartender system. We're talking about basic inventory procedures, the beer system maintenance, which is one of the first things that we let people do when they come out of training is they have to know how to maintain the beer system. We're finalizing their first original cocktail 10 weeks in, which is usually like 3 to 4 months in. Materials test 50 random tastes or 50 random drinks. We're not predetermining anymore. We're just literally calling 50 random drinks off the menu. Blind taste test 4. Same thing again, just more advanced. Right, and then week 12. Basics of cocktail menu development. At this point in time, they would have created a few different drinks, right? So we sit down and talk about cocktail menus from around the country. They're responsible for knowing about global cocktail bars and cocktail personalities. I think it's important to know about the people who came before us. Week 12 material test includes that stuff. And then we make them make the 100 list for the public for $1 each. And they literally have a copy of the 100 list in front of them that we tape down to the bar top, right? And there's a line of people in front of them, and there's a Sharpie marker, and every guest walks up and pays $1 for their cocktail and marks off all the cocktails on the menu until they're done. They also have to taste 50 different spirits or liqueurs blind and identify 45 out of 50 of them, right? Which we do that one first. Those are reversed. So until you get 45 out of 50, right, you can't make the drinks for the public. But it's awesome because the 45 out of 50 sounds really hard, but by this point, they almost always get 40 on the first one. It's closing the gap on the last 5 because it's like, which one's Campari? I don't know, the red one, right? So there's some gimmies in there and stuff like that. But like the hard stuff is like, which one's the wheated bourbon and which one's the rye bourbon and which one's rye? Like those are the harder ones. But I feel like if you're going to create cocktails, you really need to intimately know the difference between what those 3 spirits are. It's important. But it's awesome because at the last day, we all really promote, it's so-and-so's finishing training, and we kind of introduce him to the public even more than what's already happened. All the regulars come up, and it's awesome. They're like, congratulations, I've been seeing you working hard when you've been coming in, right? And it's more of a celebration. We don't time them or anything. It's just more of a celebration about how far they've come, right? It's a goal at the end, and at that point, we put their name on the menu. Yes?
What's the compensation of someone after 3 or 4 months of training?
At that point, we give them a raise. So our staff, I'm really transparent about this with everybody, so they won't mind. Our staff makes $2.13 an hour, which is the Texas minimum wage when they're working through training, unless they're doing barback shifts or something like that, and then we pay them $15 an hour, right? But as soon as they get through their first 3 weeks, they enter the tip pool, right? Even as a disproportionate member, and everybody understands that because they all went through that process as well. And then when they get through with training, they get paid $5 an hour, and then we give them raises independently after that, right? So, but our staff makes $65,000 to $75,000 a year bartending. So that's, yeah, and even during training, the 65 number versus the 75 number. So it's more tip-based, and we find a lot of different ways to take care of staff.
They actually receive tips.
During training, yeah. When they start taking bar shifts, right, which happens when they get to week 4, week 5, when they start taking bar shifts, then they're working behind the bar. They're still in training though, right? So yes.
Would you be there time limit on, say, I don't know, 8 drinks, 10 drinks, or anything?
We just adjusted it, and it used to be harder. I think we used to say that initially you had to do 4 and 4.5 minutes, right? I think was what it was initially, right? And I think we've adjusted it to 4 and 6, but we've made the cocktails a little harder. So kind of a balance in that regards, right? Which doesn't sound like that's that quick, but this is still a pretty new person, right? So, I mean, nowadays we try to average a minute per cocktail depending upon the drink. So, yes?
How much does this training program cost you?
$2,000-something. I can't remember the exact amount, but we did that. So when they're not working for tips and we're compensating them outside of that, our specific labor cost on that is $2,400-something. So, yes?
Same question.
Cool. Yes, Ann?
I just want to, add to what you said, that I think what's so important is, you're saying the effort strength. I think so many people open, be it a bar or restaurant, want to be everything to everybody. And there's so many good bars that I've heard, reiterate the same thing you had said, like Leo at Nomad said when he opened up there, he had 8 drinks on the menu. Because he knew the staff he had, he consistently made those, 8 drinks. And I think there's just nothing wrong with that, and restraint is so, crucial. Again,
Yeah.
we're talking about that with, all of your bars and concepts, and then having the people to be able to, execute those. But I think everybody's tendency is to do more. And it's like,
Yeah.
in one place and everybody consistently do them good all the time.
Yeah.
You know, have those bartenders be able to execute those drinks every shift, every day, every time. Because obviously you don't want to walk in the bar and be like, oh, geez, Bobby's not working, let's go to
Yeah.
pastry war.
That's helpful for so many reasons too.
You know, important that you're, you know, reiterating that and everything that you're talking about. It's like the knowledge is needed, but then you have restraints in the, concept.
I mean, if you try and open a cocktail bar with 108 drinks on the menu, right, unless you have a world-class staff, that's going to go really, really poorly. So just be honest with yourself from the beginning about what you're capable of. But then if you want to do low-proof cocktails or barrel-aged cocktails or cocktails on tap or whatever your favorite new trend is recently, you know, doing that stuff at a moment when you're capable of executing that in a more refined manner, you're just creating more PR value for the bar too, because you're introducing something new in the bar at that time. So let the bar grow. Let the identity of the bar be somewhat organic. Talk about it. You know, when people are coming in during your first 2 months, if you have intentions for the menu to get larger, go with the smaller menu and say, we're going to be expanding, but for the first 2 months, we really want to work on service and hospitality. People won't have a problem with that. Include a note in the menu if you want to include that. I've seen a lot of people with opening menus, and we've adopted this policy where we'll put out a menu and what's coming is grayed out, or it says coming soon on it, right? So we're telling people we're going to do more, we're going to provide you more, but we need to stay limited in this regard right now so that we can get our feet. So I think that all helps a whole lot. And then last slide here is don't ignore the support staff, right? So we've talked about support staff a little bit today, but these are just 7 tips. I wrote this last night, you know, just trying to think about support staff. Product locations and names for spirits and produce, right? I think like one really, really important here, especially if you have a support staff that doesn't always speak English, is to teach them what the names are of produce in English, right? Or to teach your front of the house staff what the names of things are in Spanish, right? I don't know if this is what your lives are like, but I would assume that it is for a lot of us, right? So cucumbers are cucumbers to them and they're pepinos to us, right? And we need to know the difference between those two things, because when we're rushed on Friday and Saturday, we need to be able to have a conversation about the ingredient that we have right away, and I think that's an ongoing process, right? So we talk about that a whole lot, showing them the location of spirits, teaching them what spirits look like. This is Laird's Bonded Apple Brandy, right? Is something that needs to happen. It's a conversation that needs to happen. Those conversations happen on Sundays and Mondays. They don't happen on Fridays and Saturdays, right? It's easier to not worry about that on Sunday and Monday because you can go get it by yourself. Right, it takes more effort, care, and time to say, Isaiah's, let's go get the Laird's Bonded Apple Brandy together, right? So that on Friday and Saturday night, you know, that can happen more efficiently, right? But I mean, they like to be challenged. They want to be part of the bar team, and doing these types of things, I think, in terms of how you talk about products and showing people where things are at specifically, as opposed to this is where the liquor's stored. Here's an empty bottle. Find the one that matches, right? I think it just creates a different culture in how you treat them. Cocktail ingredient prep, house procedures for ingredients, syrups, infusions, shelf life, etc. Right? Cross-training people. Right? If you're like us at Anvil, we have 2 barbacks on Friday and Saturday, and then 1 guy who works the kitchen. Right? He's prepping cocktail ingredients. He's putting out a small food menu that we have, right? And he's resupplying things that might need some amount of prep, like juice, for example. Right? Cross-training all those people, because if there's only 3 people who work in the bar, right, and Isaiah can't make it to work one day, right? Someone needs to know how to do that job instead, right? So there's training that goes into that as well. It's not as easy as hey, bartender, can you pick up my shift, right? It's a whole different world. Yield analysis. This is one thing that we have our back of the house staff do for us every single week. They take a case of limes, they juice them all on a Friday in preparation for when we're going to fill our 65 seats in 10 minutes, right? And they tell us how much juice we get out of that case, right? So that we know what our lime juice cost is that week, and we talk about it the following week, right? So we do this every single week. They are participants more than just lime juicers in that process. They also watch like our mint cost and things like that, and they're like, hey, did you guys know that this and this has been really low this week, and we're not getting as much as this, and these products aren't as good as they used to be. They give us a heads up on that, right? So that we can have that conversation as a staff and as a group, right? So it's like, hey, the limes are they're just not good, or this case of limes wasn't, you know. Linen cost. Between our 8 places, we spend $100,000 a year on linens, right? So just talking to the staff about that really can be a big issue. I mean, when we typically get back of the house staff in that are new back of the house staff members, they just run through linens because they may have not worked in a company or restaurant or bar that cared about small costs, right? So training them to care about small cost is really, really important. Talking about cost of chemicals, all those things, not at a sacrifice to cleanliness, but just in a more conscious manner is really important. Glassware procedures. Hey, I need you to give me a heads up on when we're going to run out of Tom Collins or Collins glasses and stuff like that, just as a backup for if the staff in the front of the house misses that. These are how much these glasses cost. Don't break them. This is the rack for this. Taking the time, if it's someone's first back of the house shift, to spend the entire shift with them will save you so much money over time. And I don't think that people typically do that. We just assume that our other back of the house people are going to communicate the same things. Garnish, preparation, storage, etc., showing them how the garnish goes into a cocktail, right? So that they don't just think, oh, it's mint. Okay, cool, I know what mint is. No, this is how mint works in a cocktail. This is how the garnish should be prepped on it. They'll pull down all the leaves over the lower portion of the stem and leave the buds on the top for us. They understand that that's how that works, so that we can use the leaves on the lower portion of the stem for making cocktails and use the tops for garnish. And then staff inclusions. Make them part of the bar team, not bartender servants, right? When we hire our staff at Anvil, I introduce them to Isaias, and I tell them that Isaias is the most important person that works for me, and that you will say thank you every single time he brings you something, right? Do you guys take shots as a staff? Do you take shots as a staff in front of the barbacks and not include them, right? These are all things that I think that you should think about with your back of the house staff. They will impact your service more, I think, if you have a large venue or you're doing a lot of volume, than your bartenders will. And we just assume that they're doing their jobs right, or assume that they know certain things, right? And we frequently do that with a language barrier at the same time, right? Spend the time with them, get to know them. It will create so many dividends in terms of hospitality, profits, and efficiency. It's a really, really important part of running a bar. They have so many responsibilities, and if you don't take the time to spend it with them and talk about what you want out of their job, it also creates a state of confusion for them a lot, where they're like, am I doing a good job? And no one ever talks to me, and I don't get any shots, right? I hope they like me. They just tell me to go get things. Like, what an uncomfortable situation to work in, right? But I think that 90% of bars around the country, not cocktail bars, but just general bars, probably operate like that, where it's like, and they rotate that person every 6 months, right? And every time they rotate that person, there's a sag in service, and it's just like, it doesn't have to be that way. They're really important. Take care of them, care about them, spend time with them, include them into the staff, and it'll be a big part of how your bar operates. So, cool? That's my last slide. You guys got questions about anything in particular? Yes?
Yeah, going back to the training, is just whoever's on shift that night responsible for training?
It's usually the veteran on shift. The staff is very conscious of who's
dedicated to
yeah.
spending that time training?
Yeah, they know who's been there longer. I don't care as much as they do, but they all care. And so it's like, all right, Jesse's been here 2 months longer than Jonathan. You guys are the same people now. You've worked here for 2 years, but that's cool. Jesse can train them, right? So.
How many people do you train at a time?
We're training more than what we normally would right now at Anvil. We have 2 people going through training. One's on week 10 and one's on week 4. But that has to do with the fact that we basically divided the Anvil staff. Half of them went to Julep to work at Julep, and the other half stayed at Anvil. So, but other than that, it would be really odd for us to not have, or to have more than one person training at any given point in time. So, yes?
What's like a rough kind of hour-by-hour breakdown of your setup, service, and breakdown for your shifts? Like, do your bartenders come in 2 hours early, or is your bar back a little early?
Our bartenders come in an hour before the shift starts, along with our bar back, and we can set everything up in that amount of time. And then every single person comes in. When it says on the schedule that you're scheduled to work at 5 o'clock, that means that you are ready to make drinks at 5 o'clock, right? And that your station is not set up. So you have to come in with however much time you need to set that station up, and you have to be ready to make drinks by 5 o'clock. So that's what our schedule means in that regards. Barbacks come in at 2 o'clock, and then everybody opens in the same way. So we typically get the setup done with 2 bartenders on Fridays and Saturdays. We have 3 people setting up, and then another person who's ready to make drinks at 5. So we'll have 4 fully stocked stations by 5 o'clock. Closed down at the end of the night. Our staff on a Sunday, Monday makes it out by 3. On a Friday and Saturday, 4:30. So And we hire I don't know if you guys do cleaning crews. We do a cleaning crew twice a week at Anvil. We do one at the end of the night on Thursday, and we do one or I guess Friday morning, and then we do one Sunday morning. They clean everything that's not behind the bar, right? So they dust the ceilings and touch up the windows and clean under the tables and clean the crevices and things like that. So.
The rest of the time when your bartender's mopping?
Yeah, we mop. They even mop on those nights, so we just don't do it in a different way. But then there's a cleanup crew that comes back just in preparation for the volume that we're going to do on Friday and Saturday. I would say that we have 800 to 900 people who walk through the bar on Fridays and Saturday night at Anvil, and then we want to clean it up and touch it up just a little bit more before Sunday service starts again. So, yes. Other questions? Yes.
Will you talk a little bit about how much liquor brands play into your menu and your decision to
Yes. I probably have one of the more extreme opinions on liquor brands and stuff like that. Like I think Ann was probably really surprised when I told her, no, it's cool for Patron to come in because I'm about the most critical person outside of Todd in San Francisco that I know. It's really important to me personally that the brands that we carry, we have a personal relationship, especially with mezcal and tequila, with someone in the company. We're really, really picky about what we carry. In Texas, it's also really difficult to get pay for play, or pay for, what's the phrase that everybody uses? Pay for play, is that right? Yeah. Pay for play menu placements. Like I couldn't do it if I wanted to, and then even if I wanted to, I still wouldn't do it. So it just depends. But that puts us in that situation where we're using beefeater handles and stuff like that because, I care so much about what we carry that I don't have a problem pouring Tapatio as our tequila at the Pesci War for $25 a liter, right? Because it's more important to me that I carry something where I know who's making it, and that just matters a whole lot to me. So I'm probably a different person to ask that question for. I also work for myself. I don't have to answer to anybody, so life is different for me. I can decide to pour a cocktail with a 26% cost percentage on it because I like the person who owns the brand and feel connected to that, and I know that a lot of you guys can't, right? So it just totally depends. Yeah. I know that wasn't an answer, but that's who I am. So yeah. Other question? Yes.
I have an unrelated question. One of the issues we've had at my bar is on a packed house Thursday through Saturday is communicating to guests that we don't offer table service. And I was wondering how on the menu, how do you relate to like first time visitors if they have to order from the bar, even if they go sit?
Does your packed house have a door guy? No. I would pay a door guy. If you're that packed, I would pay a door guy $15 to $20 an hour and turn him into someone that helps me out with IDs and also helps communicate that to guests, right? And I would do that from 9 to, when's your bar close? 2 a.m., right? So at the most, it's going to cost you $100 on a Friday or Saturday, right? I would take on that additional labor, and I would think that I'm getting a security benefit, an ID benefit, and a service benefit from that, provided that you don't just hire a door guy and say, check IDs. Right, you have to spend a shift with him talking to him about these are the things that I need you to tell guests. The Pesci War is a really, really big cocktail bar. There's a long story as to why it is, but it's a very, very large cocktail bar. We're putting 300 people in it on a Friday or Saturday night. Our door guys have to be able to tell our staff or tell our guests that they have to order at the bar in certain areas. We do table service for the 8 main tables in the main room, and then there are 2 kind of adjacent rooms to that. The people in those other 2 rooms, like they have to know that they have to come to the bar for bar service, right? So we use the door guy in that position to do that. So that would be my advice. I also kind of thought you could do like a bar service sign, right? Like that. Could you do something classy that says something like, we do table service more specifically on Fridays and Saturdays at the Pesci War that we don't do on Mondays, right? So I thought maybe I could do kind of like an old vintage no vacancy or vacancy hotel sign that related to table service. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's not an answer, but I think thinking of every possible option that you have and weighing all those benefits together will help you address those types of service problems, right? Did you build the bar from scratch?
with my own 2 hands.
Yeah. Where's the bar at?
It's in Baton Rouge.
No. Where's the bar at as it's in its physical relation in the bar?
It's a rectangular shaped bar with the space is rectangular shaped with an L shaped bar on the right wall with 22 seats.
Is it near the entrance or is it away from the entrance?
Yeah, it's
Near the entrance?
to be
I would really, another thing that we do at Amble is we only have a door guy Thursday through Saturday, but we get very, very busy on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Is like if we can't hear the bar staff say hello to every person that walks in, or say here's some menus, or let us help you guys at the bar and stuff like that. If we can't hear that all night long, like it's a constant source of conversation for us at the end of the shift. So
we had a Yelp review about 2 weeks ago that somebody was sitting on the couch, and even though it says on his menu, it says on a sign on the table in front of him, he still said it like, I don't understand why people rave about this place. Been sitting here for 10 minutes and nobody's come to talk to me yet.
right.
It's like,
I just wouldn't read Yelp. That would be the first. But actually, no, this is part of our training, though. Like when we're working with people behind the bar about speed and efficiency, right? They're literally in their first few weeks, they're like, I am just trying to make these drinks quickly so that this person that I just took a drink order from is happy with how quickly I made their drinks, right? And then after that, like I expect you to be taking 2 rounds of drinks at a certain point in training, right? And then it's a firm rule at any point in time if you've been there more than a couple months, if you don't have a third round, right? You don't have to necessarily be making it, but if you don't have a third round, you're not doing your job, right? It's like I'm making something, right? I'm ideally making 2, and I'm talking to another group about their third, right? And like slowly what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the conscious diameter of the bartender to broaden over time, right? So where it's like, I want the bar staff to get to a point where it's like, did you see those 2 people go to the bathroom together? I guarantee they're going to hook up in the bathroom. You say, let's go get the bathroom, right? Like, it's just like, while I'm making 4 to 5 rounds of drinks, right? It's just like, we want to, what's the music level at? What's the lighting at, right? Like adding just layers of consciousness on top of that, right? Let me put my more vocal staff members close to the door so that they can talk to people when they're coming in, right? What's the difference between projecting and yelling at guests? Can I talk to someone 3 deep, right? Because I want to have a conversation with that person 3 deep in a way that tells the entire group of people in front of me that they should have more confidence about how I'm doing the job. Like I have this problem with the pastry war staff right now because they're not quite there in the same way that the Amble staff is because the culture's not there, right? But it's like talk to the person way back there in a manner that inspires confidence in everybody else that's standing in front of you, right? You're having that conversation at a certain volume, and the volume is not, can that guy hear me? The volume is, the staff here is really excited to have us all in, and I'm sure they'll be with us in a minute, right? That's the difference in the way that you talk to your guests, especially if you're going to handle a lot of volume. It's like, are you doing that, right? Because that person that's sitting on the couch, if they can hear you in a manner that's not the bartender's loud or yelling, and it's a balance in learning how to do this in volume settings. I learned that in nightclubs, right? But that person's on the couch is like, that guy's obviously the guy that's taking orders. I'm going to get my ass up and I'm going to go ask him for a drink, right? He seems like he's having a lot of fun, right? I'm going to go be a part of that, right? So maybe that doesn't fit your bar, but I do think that there's definitely an ongoing, like every single shift, right? Every single shift, if I'm working with someone new, we talk about how their shift went at the end of the shift. Every single shift. It's like next Friday when we work together, I really want to hear you more, right? I had trouble hearing you tonight, which means that the guests had trouble hearing you, and I want our bar to be more enthusiastic than that, right? And it all depends on the type of bars that you're talking about. Pastry War is a really, really high volume cocktail bar, right? So that's what fits that. But either way, if it's a restaurant, right, and it's like you're too loud, right, you would still talk about it at the end of every single Friday night, and you would talk about how those things match the type of service, the expectations, and the demands that your guests have, right? So all that stuff, it's constant training. So, yeah. Yes?
I work in a very similar bar. We have 2 line corners, 1 L shape, and it's on Bourbon Street where we do have to do, it says on tabletop, just place your order here, and then we have signs hanging above our 2 service stations, and I don't know if you tried the table pens, and we put them right next to the menus. Have you tried doing like a full table pen size thing?
Yeah, that's what, we had a real problem. I worked at that same But I mean, it came to a certain point where it was, now you're taking up our table, you know, because it's high volume. It's like, you need to go get a drink, you know, without being.
Well, the good thing, if it's truly and actually high volume, the great thing about high volume that occurs is that your labor margins get easier to deal with, right? So maybe it's time to hire an additional person to function in that regard so that we're not having awkward situations for guests, right? No one plans for their bar to open and be gangbusters busy, right? Or you shouldn't. You should plan for your bar to open and be somewhat successful, right? If it turns out to be gangbusters busy, then it's time to reevaluate how the guest experience occurs and how the labor model matches what the expectations are walking through the door, right? So if you're doing high volume and you haven't changed what the labor scenario is in that situation, or you work for someone that does that, right? They're just happy that they're collecting the additional dollars, right, at the end of the month, every single month. And maybe you should be the person in that situation, you know, who says, hey, I really think that this hourly employee would improve the experience that we have. We would only need them during this time. This is how much they would cost yearly, right? And this is what I think it would do for us in terms of sales in exchange for that, right? Which that type of proactivity really goes a long way with owners. Now that I'm on that side of the scenario, when our staff does that with us, I'm like, wow, this is awesome, you know. And I don't think about how it impacts me financially as much as I think about, like, this is a great conversation that we should have as a staff, and they're communicating to me something that they can't personally solve, right? They're not being lazy. If they were being lazy, they would just never do that, right? They would never come to me with that, and they would just be like, and that person, yeah, it's not going to work out for you, right? Like, that's just how they would think about it, right? That type of initiative and coming forward with that type of stuff, if you're working for someone else, goes a long, long way in talking and sharing with people about what you're capable of doing every single night, right? Yes?
In hearing you talk about the numbers that you're doing at some of these bars that you guys have, and the fact that you have this many in one market, I know we have a vastly different market in New Orleans than we do in Houston, but I'm really curious what the conversation's like when you're not only thinking, like, do you decide you want to open another bar and then you see where it'll fit, or are you saying,
Just to
put one here, or how does that conversation?
maybe to clarify, we have 8 places in a company that me and Kevin started called Clumsy Butcher, right? And every single one of the 8 places has a different personality that represents that establishment. So I'm Anvil and Pêche-War. Chris Shepard is Underbelly. Underbelly's a restaurant. And Chris is awesome. Chris won the James Beard Award this year. He's incredible. It's a restaurant. Kevin, who made me promise to him that if I would do a cocktail, or if he did a cocktail bar with me, that I would help him do a beer bar one day, runs our beer bar, Hey Merchant. We have a coffee shop called Blacksmith. We have a nonprofit bar called Ochre, the Charity Saloon, which we operate with a group of restaurant and bar managers from around the city. So really, when it comes down to like bars, we have Anvil, the Charity Saloon, which is a really democratic, casual concept. We've got Julep, which is Anvil's more mature, older sister. The Pêche-War, which is our high-volume, funky, very opinionated mezcaleria. And then we're opening a small music venue that'll hold 100 people called Nightingale Room, and it opens in a month. So really, we only have like 4 bars, like that you would only really evaluate them as a bar. 2 of them or 3 of them will be downtown on the same corner as part of a movement to kind of resurrect downtown. And then Julep and Anvil are away from one another. So.
But even still, when you're choosing to open any of these 8 places, I mean, just hearing the volume you talk about doing, that's fucking crazy to me. That I can't think of a lot of places in town where we're able to do volume like that in a cocktail setting. And I'm just wondering, is it really just the market is that different?
Julep doesn't do that much volume. Pêche-War is really only that busy on Fridays and Saturdays. During the week, we really struggle to ring $1,000 in sales, right? Same thing for Ochre and what will be Nightingale as well. Anvil's the only one that's consistently busy every single time you go in there. But I think that also has to, to answer your question more specifically, why does it happen that way? I think it has to do with our attitudes for service. We never tell someone that they can't have something, right? We're always appropriately staffed for how busy we're going to be. We don't, it's not necessary that we do that much volume, and we don't open a bar with those types of sales expectations. It just kind of occurs. We're really good at marketing, frankly. We put ourselves out there a lot. I don't know, but I think like the way that we open Anvil, right, that it's like, from that nightclub perspective, I think has really changed our bars in some regards. I don't think Anvil is a nightclub experience. I just think it's just like, a bunch of people are going to come in here, so we're going to serve them a bunch of drinks. It's just that simple, I think, for us. And we've never had a situation where it's like, we need to hold the door, and you know, these people aren't having this precious experience that we expect that they would have. You know, it's just, we never thought about things like that because that's our city, right? We built a bar for Houston, right? Houstonians would not like that. They don't want to have that type of experience, right? And if they do, then, you know, God bless the person that wants to create it and give it to them. It's just not me, you know? So I like that. I don't like quiet, not busy bars either, and I don't like working in them. I like being slammed. Like, come in and crush me on a Friday and Saturday night, right? And just watch me make drinks. I don't know. I always like that part of bartending, and I always will. So, yes.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up.
Cool.
So if we have some more questions and things like that, I'm sure Bob is going to
I'll hang out. Yeah.
some afterwards. So everybody, let's give a big round of applause to Bob.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.